What's up, guys? It's Gary with Fresh from the Farm Fungi. I'm here in Denver, Colorado, and today I'm going to be bringing my cultures out of long-term storage. So I've got my slant cultures that I pulled out of the refrigerator not too long ago, and a couple new strains that I'm still unsure of, but I think I'm going to add them to my production. So as people join in, I'll just kind of wanted to give the updates on some of our other projects that we have going on. So if you saw our Fungi Friday from a few weeks back, you'll know that we just received a new strain from New Zealand. It's called Agar parasitica, and I just put that into fruiting today. So I'm really excited to see what will happen. It colonized okay on master's mix, and I just cut a slit in the bag, and I'm hoping that it will pan out. I've also got a few different phenotypes that I'm going to be test running just to see, if there's any difference in phenotypes. I've also got the cordyceps update. I just uploaded a video this morning, so kind of just waiting for fruiting on that too. And then our Boletus edgeless, I have about 5 spawn bags ready, and I'm waiting for the Cistus ladanifer bushes to come in. So once those come in, I'll start moving forward with that project. So I planned out some areas in my backyard where I'm going to be doing. Oh, cool. So someone says that they got the Michigan Oyster. I'm about to fruit that too. So I'm really excited. I haven't actually fruited it out yet. It was a gift to me in the fall. So I'm going to be test running some of those along with this North Carolina oyster strain. And I got a King Blue strain from Mossy Creek Mushrooms. So shout out to them. Someone gave this to me in a trade as well. And I liked my first test batch, so I'm going to do a little bit more. So the Boletus edgeless is on hold until I get the bushes that I'll plant with the mycelium. And I've got some bacteria that I'm growing out as well to do a drench, the Pseudomonas fluorescens. And then the King Stropharia, I've got in some grain as well. So I'm going to be doing some outdoor projects this spring. I'm really excited. I planned out some raised beds, and I got some really cool fabric raised beds. I'll go over that later, but they have like a built-in PVC, so I can put up some screen to protect it from bugs, because that's the one issue when you're growing mushrooms outdoor, is that it's really prone to bugs and insects. Alright guys, so this week I wanted to kind of talk about different types of auger and, why I choose to use slants. And basically my rule of thumb for the past couple years has been to get my production up by March. So that gives me almost a full week, to move these slant cultures onto auger and make sure that they're healthy. And then I'm going to expand my auger onto liquid culture, and then from the liquid culture I'll start making my grain spawn. So shout out to everyone. Thanks for joining on Fungi Friday. The plan is to just go through some of these different petri dishes that I have and kind of explain their purpose, and then move forward with my culture expansion. So alright, so some people are asking about clones and trading. If you shoot me an email, I'm very open to trades. It's freshfromthefarmfungi@gmail.com. And what I often ask for is just, a picture of the mushroom while it's fruiting and possible descriptions of what tree it's found, if it's a wild clone. I've done a couple spore prints, but, that was a rare exception. I really prefer, plates or slants or liquid cultures. But yeah, feel free to shoot me an email if you're open for trades. And I've really got to test out some cool strains. So this is a wild clone from North Carolina. I am also test running a Lion's Mane clone, and they've been really good as far as growth. The yields aren't quite what I'm used to, but I feel like it's going to be a good pool of genetics to just mix some new varieties for the summertime. All right, so what's up, guys? Welcome to Fungi Friday, and I'm about to start talking about some Auger. So one more time, the Gmail is freshfromthefarmfungi@gmail.com. So that's, for any questions, or if you're interested in a trade, just let me know. But anyway, so you notice that I've got a few different types of Auger. So I'll kind of stack these up so you guys can see them. And a lot of people, they, like to add coloring to their auger for various reasons. I'm not a fan of that just because the way that I was taught, every auger type has its own characteristics and it has its own unique traits which contributes to its color. So you can see I've got some different types of auger right here, and the first one that you can see is a DRBC. So this is dichloran rosebangle with chloramphenicol, and this is a really good auger used for quality control normally. So I became familiar with this auger when I did quality control testing, and we would go around to different facilities and use these as settle plates so you can quantify the different contaminants in the air. So I have a video on YouTube about that, but I recently started playing with this auger for cleaning up plates or for cloning wild mushrooms, and the benefit is that it has, first of all, it has chloramphenicol, which is a mild antibiotic, so it prevents any bacterial growth. And then it also has rosebangle, which is a dye that it kind of works in two different mechanisms. But the first mechanism is that it will reduce the growth rate of mycelium. So that's really important when you're doing spore prints or spore streaks, because you want to be able to isolate the mycelium as it starts to grow. So that's one key thing. Another key component of the rosebangle is that it differentiates yeast from other bacteria. So it's a differential media, and any yeast that grows on this is going to turn bright pink. So it's kind of cool, but in my world, yeast is not ideal. So it's a really cool tool just to see, like, oh, I'm getting some yeast in my cultures, which are really hard to detect on PDA or MEA. So this is the most selective media that I ever use. But I use it sparingly, and I'm not even going to be inoculating anything on these. I made them for someone else. So I just wanted to cover, the rosebangle auger, or DRBC for short. So let's see, someone had some questions about. So, all right, cool. Alright, so now we've got our black charcoal yeast auger. So this has become very popular recently. In my experience, we use the black charcoal yeast or activated charcoal in plant tissue culture because of its buffering properties. So activated charcoal can take on ions, and this will prevent the pH from fluctuating. And during plant tissue culture, while the plants are growing, they'll exude different exudates or compounds from their roots, and this will change the pH pretty rapidly. So the same can be applied in mycology. If you're having, a really rigorous strain that changes the pH often, or it's a really good way to revitalize some strains too. And I think that the coolest part about this auger is that it has very, slight inhibitory properties where it's going to give the fungi an advantage over like a bacteria because of the buffering property, and it makes the mycelium really stand out. So a lot of beginners will use this black charcoal just because it helps you decipher, this is mycelium because it's going to be really white on a black background. So I hope that makes sense. So that's the black charcoal yeast, and we add nutritional yeast flakes to ours to add nutrients as well as a malt. So it's very similar to MEA, which is our next auger. So this is malt extract auger, and this is one of my favorite augers. It's just used for production. It's very, all-encompassing. Most fungi will grow on MEA or malt extract agar. It's just a derivative from a grain, and that provides the sugar for the mycelium. So right next to the MEA is PDA, which is potato dextrose agar. So you can see it's a lot lighter in color, but it essentially does the same thing. And I rotate between these two augers whenever I do my transfers. So some of these, it looks like actually all of these slants are on MEA, so I will use my PDA plates, and that way the mycelium doesn't get too comfortable utilizing the same nutrients. So I'm not super familiar with the physiology of that, but essentially the mycelium will adapt to one food source, and then it will gain some kind of a resistance over time, which is why you can observe senescence. So I'm going to transfer from these slants to my agar dishes, and the reason that I use slants is because I can store these for a really long time. So you can see all the nutrients in the butt of the slant, which is the lower area, and I stored these for a few months in the refrigerator, and I like the twist off tops because it provides an extra layer of protection. So you can get slants with pop-off tubes, but in the past, my experience is that, if you leave it out at room temperature, it could build up gas and shoot those tops off, and then you don't have a sterile culture anymore. I kind of just do the parafilm as an extra precaution, mostly when I'm, moving them from my storage to the lab or vice versa. And then I also have my sterilized pouches. So these are nice because they indicate that my tool is sterile when I'm doing my cycle. So I know that, the auger is sterile, and if I have any problems, then it's going to be coming from my flow hood. But these have been sitting for a few days, so I know that they're sterile. And then the last thing I have here are these number 11 blades. I really like using these, especially digging into the slants. The number 11s are really sharp, and they allow for really nice transfers. So, oh yeah, and then I've got my parafilm here, and this is what I use to seal up my plates. It keeps the moisture in, and contaminants out. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is just sterilize my hand with some rubbing alcohol. And I will start off with my rosebud. This is a pink oyster that I bred from spore last spring, and I really like this strain because it produces tight clusters, so I can pick it, a few hours apart, and there's virtually no difference between like a mushroom cluster that was picked in the morning versus the evening, where some of these pink oysters, they grow so fast that if you don't keep up with it, you'll get really loose cap ones, and I'm not a fan of that just because they won't have as long as a shelf life. So I really like the rosebud. I called it that because it's tight like a rose. And I'll start off with that one. So I'm gonna, probably do about 4 or 5 plates per slant, just in case there's some kind of contaminant that has been sitting in there for 6 months. I'll be able to isolate it, and also, I want to use some of these plates right away, so that's why I'll do 5 per slant. So I really like using these because I don't have to mess with the flame. But if I run out of sterile handles, I'll probably just flame sterilize and show you guys that. So this is the number 11 blade. It's definitely my favorite for doing this procedure. Alright, so I've got my rosebud, and I'm just carefully opening this slant. And since I have a vertical flow hood, the clean air is coming down. So if I leave it open like this, then I know that I'll have a pretty good chance of getting a clean culture. And then I like to just cut like a little triangle out of there and just take it over to my plate. And then I'll set that off to the side and just kind of repeat that. So, these conical tubes are really nice because you can really get in deep and kind of get a nice piece. With some of the glass tubes, you might have to use a loop or something to scrape the mycelium, but these conical tubes are cool because it's really easy to get a nice chunk like that. Alright, so someone asked, will music help oyster mushrooms grow? So I've never, seen a study on that. But honestly, one of the most important parts of growing mushrooms is just being observant and being present in the room. So if that means, having music playing and, you'll be more involved in the process, then I would say yes. From like a scientific standpoint, I don't know if mushrooms will respond to music. There's a lot of, studies with plants out there that claim, pretty cool things, but I don't know for sure. Personally, I just like to check on them all the time, and that kind of gives me a feeling of the environment that they're growing in. So if it's dry or if it's starting to smell funny, like just being present there gives me an advantage to catch problems early. Alright, so for those of you guys just joining in, I went over some different Auger types, and right now this is PDA or potato dextrose, and it came from a slant that is MEA or malt extract auger. So it's important to change up between different types of auger when you're doing your transfers. So I'll just label this guy before I move on so that I don't mix up my screen. And normally I'll label these on the bottom so that if the lid falls off, the culture will still be on the surface, but just for the sake of time and organization, I'm just going to do it on the top. And sometimes when you flip them upside down, that wedge will come off. Alright, so that is rosebud out of the way. I guess I can do a plate to show you guys the difference between that, but essentially when you're doing transfers from an auger plate, it's the same thing. And you know, you want to grow them out almost to the edge like this one, so you can see the mycelium is, you know, almost, it's like 99% to the edge, and I like that because then it doesn't come in contact with the ridge where you can get contamination, but you can maximize the amount of agar. So in this case, maybe I'll take 5 tiny little cuts, and then tomorrow when I'm doing my grain, I'll use the rest of the plate for the grain spawn. So this is a North Carolina oyster. So, you know, I think it's going to do better in the summer because of the warmer temperatures, but we'll find out. It looks really healthy, and I have my first flush growing in the fruiting room right now. So if anything, I'm just going to cross this guy with probably this King Blue that I also really like. Or I'll just keep it as is. I'm still running some trials on this. So one thing that I do, because I have a vertical flow hood, is I'll do my transfers while holding the petri dish like this. And, you know, it's kind of nice because it minimizes the contaminants that are coming into contact with this open air mycelium. Whereas, you know, I see a lot of people out there flipping their plates over and pulling the lid off to the side, and, you know, it's pretty large surface area, so if you don't have a perfect flow hood or perfect technique, you're just risking contamination, where, you know, you can reduce a lot just by using the bottom of the dish as kind of its own lid. And the mycelium isn't going to fall off, so you don't have to worry about that or the agar falling out. Alright, so that is the North Carolina oyster, which has a really nice aroma. It's almost like, you know, a sweet smell, and that is a good sign to me. And I just want to let you guys know, I just pulled a bunch of fresh liquid cultures. So if you're interested in getting some liquid cultures, check out our Etsy Fresh Fungi. I've just reloaded a bunch this afternoon, and I'm going to be doing probably a batch in about 2 or 3 weeks. And then I'm really excited for these Morchella that I isolated. There's about 6 or 7 really nice looking cultures, and I'll throw those in the liquid cultures once it gets closer to the fall. But right now, they're just sitting in storage. But I'm super excited for that, and I really hope that, you know, this springtime, I'll get some morels. And if not, there's a company called the Modern Forager, and this guy, Trent Blizzard, who is a really cool guy. I had bought a mushroom foraging knife off of him one time, and, you know, he told me a lot about morel mushrooms, and he releases a burn morel map every single year. So he goes on Google Earth researches where all the forest fires were last year, and then kind of pinpoints the spots to look for burn morels. So I'm planning on doing some burn morel foraging this year. They're really cool. They only come around after a forest fire, and last season was, a record year for forest fires here in Colorado. So I think it'll be, a good year to get my feet wet foraging. All right, so someone asked, do I have a freckled chestnut? So I do not. The chestnut that I cultivate, I bred from spores. So you can look back at my breeding project, and I did a spore solution onto a PF Tech, and then I cloned that chestnut mushroom, and it's been spectacular so far. I'm getting 2 weeks incubation and then 2 more weeks until fruiting. So 4 weeks, and I haven't found a better strain. So yeah, someone says, yeah, there's definitely a lot of value in cultivating morels. I'm not the first person trying this. There's been successful people that cultivated morels, but the challenging part is maintaining the strain. It's an ascomycete, so those will finesse more quickly than some of the other strains. So yeah, got some more people joining in. So welcome to Fungi Friday. I'm just revitalizing my strains right now for spring. So we're moving on to a King Blue oyster from Mossy Creek mushrooms that I got in a trade. And this one's really cool. It's got like a thick cap, and it's a fast grower as well. Almost as fast as the oyster that I've been cultivating for a while, this blue oyster strain. So I'm just gonna run them side by side one more time, and maybe I'll just keep them both. I really like the flavor on this one, but it doesn't have as long of a shelf life as the other oyster that I'm using. So there's pros and cons, but it seems to be really sticking to this auger. Yeah, and so for anyone in the Denver area, I do sell my pre-poured plates at Lion's Mane, which is a really cool mycology shop here in Denver. Matt and Tatiana are the owners, and they're really knowledgeable about mushrooms. So if you're looking to get some, pre-poured plates that you don't have to worry about contamination, then stop in, and they can answer a lot of questions too. I also sell cultures there, and some other products. I've got some Masters mix bags. If you're just looking for a couple bags to pick up for a small project, stop over at Lion's Mane in Denver. Alright, so that is the King Blue from Mossy Creek Mushrooms. And then for anyone who's interested, we're also doing cultivation workshops. There's a couple more classes left, a few more spots, but it's been really fun this year doing these classes. We've been getting a lot of out-of-state people, and I really enjoy meeting everyone and teaching everyone, and I think there's a huge benefit to doing it in person. It's a 2-day class. Check out mushroomcult.net. Zach and I, we've been doing these for about 2 years now, and they just keep getting better and better. And we've got one tomorrow, but we also did an online class, and I think there's 2 more scheduled up. So someone asked if I grow shiitake. So I do grow shiitake mushrooms. I only do it sporadically because of space issues. So you can see behind me, this is my incubation. And shiitake mushrooms, they take about 4 to 6 weeks longer than all the other mushrooms that I grow because they have to grow like a brown layer on the outside before they go into fruiting. And it's called barking, or some people just call it the skin. But the reason I don't grow more of them is because it would fill up my incubation, where if I'm just doing oysters and chestnuts and all the other ones that I grow, I'm getting a lot faster turnover. So I have about 12 bags of shiitake that are going, and I'm going to be trying some new techniques without supplementation. I heard that you get better yields from shiitake with less supplementation. Right now I'm doing 10% wheat bran, but I'm going to try to cut that way down and maybe just do straight up sawdust. So I've got a couple different strains. I'm really fond of just a commercial strain that I got, and it's got some nice fuzzy caps on it. I really love shiitake. It's one of my favorite mushrooms. It just takes longer than the rest, so I have to be careful with my space. That's the only reason I don't grow more, but someday I hope to grow a lot more shiitake. Alright, so now we're moving on to the next one. So I've got some golden oyster here. It's a Chloratus citrinopolis or something like that. So it's like a very citrusy smell. It's a tropical variety of oyster mushrooms. One of my favorites for summertime. So you have to be careful, I guess, that you don't freeze this one. But I've definitely accidentally frozen it before, and here it is. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to be expanding out these golden oysters, and these should be ready for early April, I would say. So switching between different strains, I'm just cleaning, or I'm just getting a fresh blade. And I just make sure that I don't set down my blade on the table while I pull this cap off. And carefully just make my cuts. So you can see got a really nice piece right there. So someone asked if I grow maitake. So that's another weird one. I've grown it probably about 3 or 4 times before in really small batches, but I just haven't found a good strain, or perhaps it's not as receptive to the altitude here, and it also takes a really long time. So my experience with maitake is that I really love the mushroom, but I've only dabbled with it a few times, and I didn't get, outstanding results. So I'll do it again, here and there. But until I find like a really good strain, I'm not gonna really ramp up the production. So really early on, I mentioned about trades, and if anyone has a really strong maitake, I would definitely be interested in trading. trading for some one of those mushrooms. And also some reishi. I want to do some more work with reishi mushrooms. It's a really cool mushroom, and you know, it has a lot of versatility, and it's almost like a work of art when you grow those. Oh yeah, so someone asked what master's mix is. So it's just a 1-to-1 hardwood fuel pellet to soy hull pellet. It's pretty nice if you live near the Midwest because it's fairly cheap substrate, and a lot of different mushrooms can grow on master's mix. But you know, I've been experimenting with some other mixes, and I really like a blend of different hardwoods. Where if you do master's mix, you're usually stuck to one variety, but I love, you know, the different types of mushrooms that grow on master's mix, which is why I use it. So it's very versatile. Um, so someone mentioned the goat mix. So I did see that from Mossy Creek mushrooms. So essentially that is just master's mix with a straw pellet. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm definitely interested, especially for oyster mushrooms. I never really ventured into growing with straw because it just requires a lot of prep, but it's a lot less nutritious than soy. So I feel like, you know, if you're having contamination problems, it might be a good way to help mitigate that. But yeah, maybe I'll try some of that soon and do some studies on the goat mix. I think that's another, you know, Mossy Creek mushroom invention, and just want to give a shout out to those guys because you know they're working hard over there, and I appreciate what they do on their channel, and that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy this community. Is because of people like them and people like you guys who, you know, are very open to sharing ideas and creating this awesome workspace. So someone just asked about some of the oyster mushrooms that I bred. So I did do a breeding project last spring, and there was a bunch of, you know, weird looking phenotypes that came out of that. And out of all those different mushrooms that I bred, I think the best ones I got were the pink oysters. So this rosebud. This is one of the ones that I bred. It's the Piapini. I call it a pinset popper. And then the chestnut mushroom. I also bred the chestnut. So I got two really nice pink oysters, a Piapini, and a chestnut. I did some black throat kings and some lion's mane, and you know they came out okay, but not really impressed enough to switch over to those strains. So you know, out of probably 300 Petri plates, I only got 4 winners. So that's, you know, the probability that you have to expect when you're doing these kind of projects. So someone asked if I grow king trumpet. Yep. So I really love king oyster mushrooms, especially this time of the year. They like cooler temperatures. I have a strain that I got from my mentor from Niagara Falls. His name is Anthony, and he gave me a king oyster from Niagara Falls, New York, and I still use that strain. It's also where I got my lion's name from, so shout out to Anthony and Niagara Falls Mushrooms. But he kind of coached me really early on and definitely inspired me to start doing this YouTube channel just because of, you know, the community, the mushroom community out there, and how quickly it's growing. And I'm really a fan of, you know, real data, real science, but also using what you have. There's a lot of bro science out there and people that swear by one tech, that's going to really pigeonhole you long term if you're not always experimenting, always breeding new mushrooms, always trying new techniques, and don't steer away from, what's working, but it's always good to just experiment. So that's kind of the theme of this whole channel, is just experiment, just find something that works. Alright, so someone said that they've got the porcini on a plate, so I just did some grain spawn. It's in my grain spawn area, but it's coming in super fast. It's going to need to sit for about 3 or 4 weeks until I move it into some raised beds. I don't want to do it too early or it could freeze, but definitely stay tuned. I'm going to be going over my methodology for that. I've never actually fruited it, but I've been researching this for a couple years, and I think, it's on the brink. And one of the cool utilities for all these mycorrhizal fungi is that it has the potential to really help revigorate soil. So mushrooms are excellent at breaking down compounds and making them viable for plants. So I believe that, in the near future, when the soils are starting to get depleted, mushrooms can be used to revitalize old farmland or deserted, wasted agriculture space. And they're really powerful in the garden, which is why I'm going to be creating this whole new series on growing with mushrooms, probably starting with the King Strafaria. I'm really excited to get those going. I'm going to plant them with some corn and some sunflowers around the perimeter. And then I got some raised beds for the boletes, and I'm going to also plant my boletes in my rock rose garden, but I'm waiting for the bushes to come in. They won't be here until March. So that's kind of the hold up on that project. Alright, so someone asked what auger this is. So if you missed the beginning, I'm just transferring from MEA, which is malt extract, my slant, onto a PDA or potato dextrose auger. So I like to alternate between MEA and PDA so that the mycelium doesn't get comfortable with one type of media. So there's some really cool papers that are, at the forefront of some of the genetics about mushrooms. And one of the cool facts that I'm kind of interested in is the mini genes or micro genes that the mushrooms can adapt to different substrates, and they'll carry those traits through the generations, which creates some sort of epigenetic drift. I'm not super familiar with that, but I feel like as the age of genetics progresses, there's going to be a big focus on CRISPR-Cas9, and some of the future genetic tools that are definitely coming down in price, and it's going to be more open to the public in the next few years. So I'm really excited to get into that. I don't have the infrastructure yet, but I think it'd be really cool to create some glow in the dark mushrooms or some really cool traits of one species and carry it on to another species. Like if you can make like a oyster mushroom, lobster mushroom, or something. I feel like we're not that far away from that. What's up, guys? Sorry about that. So it seems like we got a poor connection. Is anyone there? Cool. Alright, so I'm just digging around, and one of the difficulties of working in the slants is if you start to mash it up like this, it can get pretty sloppy. But that's why I do more than one plate. So someone asked how I sell cordyceps. So um, I like to sell them fresh, just because no one else is selling fresh cordyceps, and I think that's how you get the most cordycepin anyway. I'm not sure about the chemistry behind them, but I usually sell them fresh in like little teeny boxes, and I'll put them in my own tea in the morning, and then as a secondary product, I'll sell them dried. And there's a huge demand for cordyceps. I really love cordyceps. I think it's a good alternative to coffee, um, and it's a really slow, sustained energy. And I think that there's a lot of applications in agriculture for them. So I have the cordyceps that I found on a beetle. I haven't fruited it out, and I'm, very skeptical of it, but I'm going to be playing with that this summer as well. So I want to make a liquid culture and kind of drench um, my rose bushes and some of the areas that seem to get a lot of Japanese beetles, and maybe my hopes are that it will colonize the grubs and it will consume them before they become full adults. Because Japanese beetles, the grubs will live in the soil, so if I can just coat it with, a bunch of liquid culture, maybe some of it will cling on and um, keep that population down. But also just biodiversity in the garden is going to help this year. I've got a bunch of new plants that I'm growing, so pretty excited. Alright, so here's my shiitake. So someone asked if I grow shiitake. So, so someone asked about the different sizes of plates. So I have a video about that on my breeding project playlist. I prefer to use the 100 millimeter plates. These are standard. It's kind of just a preference, but I've always worked with these. And then for the breeding project, though, I prefer to use the smaller plates because I can fit a lot more in my incubator. So if space is an issue, definitely consider using smaller dishes. But if you're just doing production like this, then the larger dishes are definitely the way to go. You can also use like deli containers or like little ketchup containers. I've done that in the past when I couldn't find plates, and that worked pretty well. Alright, so this is shiitake. So like I was saying before, shiitake takes a lot longer than all the other strains that I grow, so I don't do it too often. I like to do like little batches of 10 or 12 here and there. But I like them a lot because you can get a lot of flushes. So once you harvest your shiitake mushrooms, you can let them rest for a couple days and then put them in a bucket, and they'll soak up all the water like a sponge. And then, in about 4 or 5 days, you can get another flush that way. And you can continue to do that until you start to see some contamination, or, the flushes will get smaller. But it's really tasty mushroom. A lot of health benefits in shiitake. Has a lentinan in it, which is a natural statin. And you can look up research papers on it, but it's a really, really healthy food. Alright guys, so I'm just going to finish this up here. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Comment if you're, looking forward to more Fungi Fridays. I'm looking for some ideas in the future. So leave us a comment if you have any ideas or questions that, you guys want to ask. So someone asked if you can cook mushrooms on rice. So absolutely. Rice is just a grain like, oats or wheat or any other grain. The problem with the rice is that it gets really sticky. So if you're using it for like a green spawn, you're going to have problems because you're not going to be able to get it out of the jar, or it's not going to break apart, which is the purpose of green spawn. But it can be used in like, a worst case scenario. It'll work. But alright guys, I've got this Colorado Oyster. You can see how strong that one is. And then this is the other commercial blue oyster that I've always been growing. So it's two of my strongest strains for last. I'm going to wrap it up here. But yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're looking forward to more mycology videos, and stay tuned for the gardening with fungi this spring. Until next time, much love.